And the producer?
And my name is Trina Rodriguez, and I'm the producer.
Okay. And would you introduce who else is in the room, please?
This is Zhou Guang, aka Zola, one of the stars of the movie.
What's fascinating about this film is that you, for my Western eyes, you know, the kind of stupid questions, because all we know about China, if we don't go to China, is what we see on television, you know, on CNN or RT or Al Jazeera. So it was a big surprise to see the kind of access that you had to the two bloggers that you have in the film. And I wondered how you developed that relationship, how you developed the idea of the film, and where you found the two subjects.
Sure. In 2007, I had read an article about an eminent domain case that was taking place in Chongqing City.
And by eminent domain, you mean someone's property was being torn down for something big to be built by government.
That's right.
That happens in New York, too.
Yeah, sure. And so, you know, while that was a really interesting story of this one family that was resisting eviction while developers were excavating around their house.
Is that the one image in the film where there's all this excavation and there's this one house, and I wondered, how do they get out of there?
That's right. Yeah, they were actually climbing up and down that dirt pedestal while, you know, people were supporting them by bringing food, and they would sort of rope it up. But what was actually more kind of curious to me at the time when I read that was the Times had mentioned Chinese bloggers as having been a primary source of information once the story was sort of shut down by the state-run media or state-overseen media. So I was curious, like, who are these Chinese bloggers, you know, these unnamed bloggers that are providing information about the story?
Did you try to search for the blogs online?
Yeah.
And did you find the blogs?
I did, yeah. And, you know, there were stories that were coming out about one particular blogger who was already making a name for himself, and those stories were certainly linking to his blog. And so I came across Zola's blog, and I was immediately sort of fascinated because he had these pictures cycling on the index page that didn't seem very sort of you know, typical to what you would expect a citizen journalist or investigative blogger to have, you know, on his website. They were like pictures of him posing as Bruce Lee and buried up to his neck in sand at the beach. Mm-hmm. And so I was immediately curious, and I struck up a correspondence with him, and sometime later I was actually planning to go to China, and we communicated, and he invited me to meet, and we did, and it was immediate that he had a kind of a amazing story that was sort of in the you know, that was unfolding, I guess.
Now, you're called a citizen blogger. Is that correct? Is that what you're called in China?
Sometimes people call me citizen journalist or citizen report.
Citizen journalist.
So I always think I just a blog.
Okay.
I mean, everybody can report something new.
So your day job, or the job you made your money at, made your living at, was what?
My job used to be I working for a company for doing some desktop support for a college.
Okay, but didn't you do something before that? Don't we see you in the film with vegetables and a little truck? Is selling food off of a truck?
I had big city, so I returned to my parents' side. Then try to run in small business.
Okay. And your parents were farmers?
My father is a coal miner.
Okay.
Working for coal mine for 30 years.
Okay.
But my mother have no job. Used to be also then a farmer.
So how did you go from doing the good son's work to getting these kinds of a little tech equipment and start blogging?
Because when I'm working for big companies, I have a lot of time to blogging when I'm in working time. So I I made a lot of read, and but I had big city, so I returned to small village.
So this is the first blogger you found,
That's right.
and he's of a younger generation than the second blogger that we're introduced to in the film, who identifies himself as 57, I think, is his age, and he's retired. And big question mark, what does that mean in China to be retired? How does he support himself? It will be a question I will be continually sort of asking, how do they get the equipment? How do they pay for these things? And this may sound really like a dumb American kind of question, but it was what I was sitting there thinking, well, what does it mean to retire at 57 and then take up this new career in China?
Right.
This is Tiger Temple.
Right. Yeah. So Tiger had a small bookstore, also worked in advertising, and I guess what he described as like working also in the fashion industry. At a certain point, he just retired and decided that
He had saved some money.
He had saved some money, and he was not really as effective at his work. Around that period is when he also then stumbled upon that one story that we sort of launched his character.
Oh, this was a really horrible incident, and why don't you tell about what he stumbled on that started his career as a citizen journalist?
Right, so then in 2004 he had been coming home from the museum and was just walking down the street. And
What city was this?
This is in Beijing.
In Beijing.
And he happened upon an unfolding murder that was taking place, or
Right in public.
attempted murder that was happening in public, yes. And so because he had been at the museum and was sort of documenting his day, and he already had a blog and was, presumably going to take those
So he was
pictures.
a hipster. Would you call him a hipster?
I would not, actually.
You would not call him a hipster, okay.
No,
So
but
fashion-
he's very hip in a sense
Okay.
that his cultural sort of spectrum is pretty broad and has a strong appreciation for art and art history and world history, and was really well read and
Sophisticated.
pretty sophisticated for somebody who was relatively not educated. And so, as this unfolding murder was taking place, he made a call to the police and then pulled out his camera and just started documenting it, sort of on impulse, not knowing what else to do.
And these were photographs.
Yes. And so, I guess, I don't know how long it took, but the police came, and as he tells, the story in the film, the first thing they did was to come over and to yell at him for taking pictures. And then they went over to sort of investigate.
I want to ask a cultural question as an aside here.
Sure.
This sort of putting on a good face, don't show these pictures, we'll take care of it, the sort of privacy mode that the state imposes. We only tell about good things, and this was a murder that Tiger Temple had seen on the street, and some of the things that you've exposed are not they're not good PR for the local government. So how does that play into the public consciousness of people wanting to know about or feeling that they can't talk about things that really matter to them?
Sorry, can you shortly make your question shortly?
Okay, could you help me
Sure.
with making the...
How do people feel when certain news stories happen and they are not able to necessarily discuss it, and there's not wide coverage of those events?
Still too complicated.
When you started to cover the eminent domain story, or the people in the village who have been complaining that the flooding, this is correct, yeah?
No, he didn't report on either of these stories.
Okay,
Yeah,
he
that was
didn't
Tiger
report.
Temple.
All right, from your point of view, when you find something that is not in the newspapers and that nobody wants to talk about, but is important, how do you decide it's important, number one?
Just talk about news value.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
attachment. Maybe if someone else will report this one, I should not join because I don't want to waste money. If something only I can do, I will do something. This is my value, and I know there are a lot of news will be censored by mainstream media. For example, protest, demonstration, and maybe some 群体事件. Maybe like a lot of people getting together. So this is a big government worried about.
You've looked at blogs and know bloggers all around the world, yes? Have you been able to read other people's blogs?
Yes,
outside
I read
of China?
a lot of blog, but only blog in Chinese.
Only blogging in Chinese. I was wondering what the difference is for a Chinese blogger, how they see the world differently than, say, I would see it in my blog. If you were to read my blog and I were to read your blog, what would be the big difference?
Well, your blog is just mainly film, right?
My blog is, well, no, there's a lot of politics too. But
Oh, it is? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, cultural. But I'm just trying to understand the character of blogging in China with sort of the government having surveillance and the censorship that we hear about. How do you drive through all that carefully to not get in trouble and at the same time tell the truth?
I know sometimes if you're blogging something, we'll get in trouble. But in my experience, I talk everything, no censorship, just follow one rules. If you want to show me my opinion, I have to prove. Get evidence.
Proof.
Yes, proof. So I have a proof process. So my opinion is only my opinion, not about something like supervision of country.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You have a fan club?
Fan club.
No, I have no fans.
You have no friends?
Because I did not accept friends. So I always make friends because we are, for example, we are communicated with a double way. This is make friends. If one way communicate, this is fans and idol. So I refuse any fans. Yeah.
But you want to be famous, don't you?
I want to be famous, but I don't need fans. I hope people really understood my philosophy and really agree my opinion. Not just like I like a fantastic idol and my fans is stupid fans. I don't like this model.
How did you explain to your mother and father what you were doing?
My father and mother don't know much about social issue, so they are keep stupid and keep happy. Sorry.
So, but every son has to tell his father or his mother when they're doing something that the parents don't understand why it's important to you. So why is blogging important to you? More important than anything else?
Because when I blogging, I just express my opinion and get some response from my friends. Just communicate will make me happy. But if I communicate with my parents, then my parents always criticize me. So
That's
good.
parents, though. I mean, that's parents do that to their children. All of us have parents that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go back to you.
That's actually that scene that he's talking of, referencing, is at dinner when they sort of get in that discussion / argument. I particularly like that scene because it is something we can all relate to,
Yeah.
where you're trying to explain to your parents what it is you're doing, and sometimes they don't actually understand or
But
know.
But it's clear in the film that they love their son.
Of
You know,
course, yeah.
that's the thing that even if they don't understand, and all of us have that moment in a way if we do creative work with our parent. You know, so I'm going to go back to the filmmaking. So you found the story, a good story, and then you met your first blogger, and he turned out to be sort of a larger than life character.
That's right.
And at some point I read that you thought, well this will be a sort of a soft comedic look at China through technology. Is that correct? Is that how it began?
Well, I did think the tone would be much, lighter, and that there would be much more sort of comedy and humor in it. And not that it isn't funny. I think there are some tremendously funny moments that, I think other people might agree. But what wound up happening is it became a much more layered kind of project once we incorporated Tiger Temple. Because at a certain point, in documenting Zola, it became apparent that, he was telling a very important part of this story about himself, and in a way a larger systemic condition, I guess you could say, in China. But we were still missing something, and there was this layer of like cultural context, historic context that seemed to be missing. That, as a filmmaker, I wasn't interested in telling from my own perspective, because really I'm just a filmmaker, and so we looked into sort of this idea of getting a second character, and Tiger Temple was an obvious choice. And incidentally, it was funny because on our first trip we went to his house, but
Tiger Temple.
yeah, and Zola wanted to meet Tiger. Tiger wanted to meet him. They were going to collaborate on a possibly sensitive story. So, I got to the door and then I just shut the camera off. And then it wasn't like till months later I was like, holy shit, that's Tiger Temple. He had a certain, there was a certain lore about him that had already been going around.
One of the things that's interesting to me about your two subjects is the generational gap in age, in chronology.
Yeah.
But there's no gap in terms of, at least it seemed, how they see the technology as a narrative tool to tell a story. And so that the communication across the difference in years was hard to do, or was it really easy for you to capture?
I wouldn't say it was hard, because we would spend time with Zola, and then we would spend time with Tiger. So, and when you're attempting to do something more like observational, you just, a lot of your job is to shut up and observe, and let them do what they do and get out of the way if you happen to get in the way. But
And they do use it so differently. I mean, Zola's microblogging mostly, and you say in the film it's like character, cause, outcome. These major points of a story. Whereas Tiger follows one story for years and writes these in-depth, amazing essays. So they use the technology really differently.
yeah, it's a really good point. When we went to Arlo Village with Tiger, that, as an example, was a story that Tiger he had visited there about 7 times, actually, prior. So that was our 8th trip there.
This is the village which the sanitation, all the water would have
That's
been
right, the water.
destroyed. I mean, it's a very powerful story, and the villagers could get no one to listen to them.
That's right.
And he came in and started to blog about it.
That's right, yeah.
And how did the politicians?
Well, when he was on one of his annual bike rides, and he takes these rides every year, sort of to explore the countryside, as he puts it, and get to know sort of the other half of society. He ran into this older man who was drinking a can of Coke, and he asked him, like, why are you drinking soda? And he's like, well, because we don't have any clean water. And then Tiger was, immediately curious, and this village elder invited him back to show him sort of this devastation that had been occurring. And explained how for years, for many years, they had been complaining and trying to get attention, and did on occasion get some local journalists, even some journalists from Beijing, to come and report on the story. But what would wind up happening is the story would either never get reported, or the journalists would ask for money. And so Tiger, of course, being him, this very concerned and pretty remarkable guy, just interested in telling and representing the stories. This became a major, one of his major causes that he then continued to report on like 8 more times, and maintained a very sort of what they call like longitudinal relationship with these villagers.
One of the things that's really wonderful about the film for me was that we see a lot of films that come out of Shanghai and Beijing and the 21st century transformation of Mao's China into a very modern, capitalist, if you will, consumer society with lots of neon. And so Tiger Temple was part of, that's where he lived. But when we meet these farmers or these peasants or whatever the proper villagers term, they are not who we're used to seeing in the new China. And in a way, Tiger Temple represented to me the new China, as do you, because of the technology. But his ability to feel both compassion and to be trusted by these villagers was very moving, because they'd already been through it with all these other people that had come and nothing had happened. And there's something very wonderful that we see in your film. We see how that trust is given and how much they appreciate what he's doing. And he seems the opposite, very shy about his work. You take ownership of your work, and so it's a nice contrast. My concern was, I was sitting with a friend and we both sort of whispering to each other, "Oh, are they going to get in trouble? How are they getting to shoot this? We didn't know that you were Chinese."
I'm actually not.
Oh,
I'm Korean.
You're Korean. We didn't know that you were Asian. We didn't know who made the film, and so that question came up: is how did you get away with filming some of these situations when we saw the military or the police or the security around? And how did you, were you concerned about what would happen to Tiger Temple, for example, when you left?
Yeah, this is the most important question, actually, and one that I thought a lot about, and first off, it's like, these were 2 guys who wanted their story to be told, and were very kind of happy to have the opportunity to tell it, not just in sort of like a short news burst or short sort of report, but in sort of this longer form where we were referencing not just their experiences, but like a larger community of people doing what they do. But one of the things that's important to note is that they're not these kind of like high-profile political dissidents that we hear a lot about. They're not Ai Weiwei or Liu Xiaobo or Hu Jia. They're not.
They're not intellectuals in that sense either. Is that what I?
I mean, that's arguable. I mean, they certainly have very sort of bold, ambitious,
Yes.
thoughtful ideas about the future, about politics. But they're walking an incredibly fine line, and maintain.
That's the line I want you to. How did you, as an outsider, negotiate that line for yourselves in terms of your subjects?
Right. So everything they're doing is within sort of the legal boundaries of acceptable behavior.
That comes up a lot, as long as we keep it legal. And I was wondering, what does that mean?
Well, it means they're not breaking any laws. They don't roll in anywhere and say anything or do anything that is expressly stated as illegal. It's not illegal to share your opinion. It's not illegal to talk about something. Maybe like...
Or expose corruption, or expose people just ignoring.
Sure. I mean, maybe like you expose a certain story, and then that story, those keywords, of that story will wind up on sort of the list of censored words that get sort of blocked online by the Great Firewall. But it's not illegal. They're not actually breaking the law by going somewhere and just talking about their experience. And Zola's, and this is something I asked both of them a lot. And whenever you tell somebody else's story, your biggest concern is how to represent them responsibly and how to make sure that you're helping them and not hurting them. And so,
while getting the story.
Yeah, while getting the story. So, it was most important that, to understand that these were two guys that, in a way, are trying to draw attention to themselves because they're trying to draw attention to certain stories, because they're trying to change the status quo, and doing that by taking certain calculated risks. In one sense, I guess you could look at it our collaboration, and this is certainly a collaboration when you spend 4 years with somebody, you get to know them.
How many years?
4 years, on and off.
Okay.
I
It wasn't in 6 weeks and out.
Oh, it was not 4 years straight, no.
No, but it was, you went back and you...
7 different times,
Yeah, that's right. So, we'd spend about a month to 2 months each trip. And then, over that period, it's like you grow very close to these people, and, you are collaborating with them in a certain sense. So we're discussing everything we're doing constantly. They become intimately aware of sort of your intentions and sort of your...
Well, this is an interesting documentary question. The level of collaboration with the subjects, rather than just the observation and then the edit. So how did you... Tina, were you there for...
No, I was only there once.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were here.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you negotiate that line? Because you just could have gone in as a documentary or journalist, so to speak,
Right.
and just shot it and then taken it out. But you became involved with both of these people, and it felt to me as if you were concerned with what would happen to them as your movie was being made, or when the officials realized what you were doing and how this film was going to be seen by someone like me and the people that listen to our conversation.
Right.
So how did you negotiate that?
Well, one anecdote I think that is, kind of puts it into perspective is that I asked Zola early on, I was like, so should we be kind of low-key about this, or how much should we disclose or not about me?
But Zola's not low-key, is he?
Exactly. So then he was like, his response was like, oh, don't worry, I already posted photos of you filming me on your blog, so, the authorities, the police, they read my blog, so I'm sure they know what you're doing already. So I was like, okay.
If I hide my activity, so I have nothing to write to blog. I have no. Still, won't film will not documented my life and work. So.
Yeah, and I think they say, they both, Zola and Tiger Temple say, if you're completely transparent, and if you live and operate with full transparency, then you can't be accused of hiding anything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that anybody would want to know about him, they can find online.
And that's a conscious choice on their part. They
Sure.
really. How did you not become Michael Moore?
What does that mean, actually?
Well, I mean, you're not in the frame that I can remember. I don't have any memory of seeing you or hearing you.
Right.
It may have been there. That's the choice I'm talking about.
And it's interesting, I think, and it's kind of subtle, because I didn't think, early on I knew, this is not, this should not be like a first-person kind of experiential documentary. I think those can easily be pretty obnoxious unless done really well. It's probably the hardest form to do, that Michael Moore style that you're referencing. But you do see, there are modes when they're just doing their thing and they're completely immersed in that, and they kind of forget the camera's there, and that's always really an interesting moment. And then there are times where he's excited to share that, and he turns right to the camera and he explains what he just saw, and he's excited to share that, and sort of decode that with us and the camera and with you, the audience. And I think that's, in a sense, that's him telling me and interacting directly with me, but with us, because, I'm just sort of like a cipher, or, a siphon to deliver their stories to a larger
You're the
audience.
medium.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say cipher, I'd say you're the medium, just like Zola has found the medium to present himself.
Right.
You want to be a star, right?
Porn star. Sorry, she always send me a porn star. Just joking.
And why not? And why not? I mean, you're in New York, and you probably met a lot of people like me, and you walk around and you see, and we have this sort of
Yes,
very.
I wish I will be a star. I hope many people understand my philosophy and agree my opinion, and maybe we can change the world.
And what does that mean, change the world? What does that mean to you when you
Change
say
the
maybe
world?
we? Yes.
Yes. For example, technology make people better life, and communist how to say CCP? Communist Party make the world getting worse. So we have to how to say 创新 innovation CCP limit innovation. This is very very bad. Sorry.
Do you feel that you are proud to be Chinese, proud to live in China as it is, or would you rather come here?
I'm not proud of I'm Chinese because how to say, what's the last time I tell you we lost cars. We're not Chinese. I true.
I don't know.
You are Korean. I'm Han. What's the group?
Oh, ethnicity?
Ethnicity. We lost ethnicity, so I'm Chinese.
As a Han, do you feel outside of mainstream Chinese identity?
Yes, I can recognize which one is the Chinese because Chinese culture is different from another.
From your culture?
I am Chinese, definitely, but I don't proud of Chinese because Chinese seems very 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 big, but Chinese have no special culture, have no idea about trust. Nobody believe God.
So
Something that Tiger Temple talks a lot about, actually, that I think Zola would probably agree, is that there's like a loss. There's been this process of like this loss of tradition and loss of history.
Yes.
And these are two very thoughtful guys who don't want to see these sort of meaningful traditions go away. Not that Zola's absolutely not like a traditionalist, but he can certainly appreciate this,
the cultural tradition.
Yeah, and it's not something that we here don't experience as well. There's
When you, this is for all three of you, the internet has the amazing ability to make a world community that crosses across tradition, culture differences, and it's particularly among young people today. They meet each other on the internet when they would never have met each other. In certainly my lifetime when I was a kid.
That's how we met.
Yeah. And what does that mean in terms of identity, our own, and culture and difference?
Well, the one thing that kind of has struck me actually just recently is that, like my idea of who I thought these guys were changed dramatically as I got to know them. So their online persona, which is sort of the first layer, became much different than sort of this intimate persona that we got to know over time. And I think that there's something really important about that, and that we, as a team, a filmmaking team, decided early on that we were going to take two sort of highly, in a way, politicized stories. The story of the Chinese blogger has been much talked about, and it's a very, hot or, political topic. And you could really spin it in a lot of different ways. And so, but I was just interested in who they are as people. Like, what are their families like? What do they, what are they like when they're not reporting? And understanding, like, what is the evolution? Like, how did somebody like Zola become Zola? And, why is he doing what he's doing? And I think there was, it was important, I think, for us to just spend a lot of time offline, with guys who are primarily known to be online, and not hone in on what is like sort of the political issue-oriented kind of themes, but really try and decode those on a humanistic level.
Well, this is to me the strength of the documentary, and I encourage people to go see it, because it is not about being politically correct. It's not about not being politically correct. It's about really, I get to meet, sitting in a dark room with light on the screen, I get to meet two people that that I would never meet, and they fascinate me. But I also realize I am seeing a constructed identity in their blogs, and then you show me also when Tiger Temple is on that bicycle, this man my age, packing up in bicycling, out of the city. You see a more dimensioned human being that resonated the things about me, and I think so I really appreciate that you paid attention to those details, and it wasn't just politically correct or anti-censorship, anti-this, anti-that, when in fact, Zola, you live in a country, and I live in a country too, by the way, that has a lot of censorship. It's seen differently, but we have more and more censorship of the internet and what can go on the internet. And we hear about China as being completely censored, and yet you introduced me to this Charlie Chaplin kind of guy, and that's a compliment, who just goes about the business of making his blog and showing us his world as he wants. And Temple, because he's older, I think is more serious about his subject matter than Zola, who I think whatever presents itself to him that he's interested in at that moment, that's what you see. It seems like Temple is makes more choices about what he's going to share with me. And that is so universal and in a human way about people. So if that was your goal, for this audience member, you achieved it. If it was an accident, it was a very good accident. So was it an accident? It sounds like it was a goal.
Yeah. From the very beginning, we wanted to make a character study of these two guys. We were never interested in making an advocacy film or look at what China does, kind of raise your fist film. Steve comes from a fiction background, and so character is really important for both of us in storytelling, and so it's absolutely a goal. And we lucked upon these two amazing guys, like you're saying, from different generations with different approaches that sort of fit together in a really nice way to make a universal story that we can relate to here.
I want to ask a gender question, because you show us two guys who blog. Are there female bloggers in China?
Yes, a lot of female bloggers.
Yes?
For example, the famous one is Zheng Jinyan. His husband used to be in jail for 3 years.
And one of the things the internet allows each of us to do is create a fantasy of who we are. And it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz. We can draw a curtain and be whoever we are behind the curtain. And you do that a little bit, I think, by making yourself larger than life, but you don't hide behind a curtain. And And Temple, to me, there's no curtain, but he's very conscious of the persona that he is presenting. What did you, and this is a question to the filmmakers, what's the major difference between the way Zola presents himself to me as a reader of his blog, or Temple Tiger presents to me as a reader, and what you observed in real time with each of them?
Right, that's a really good question. I mean, that's the essential sort of contrast between them. That I would say Tiger is really looking at things. I don't know what better word to use, but like trends historically. So every time we would stumble upon something, he would immediately sort of reference what the historical context of that was, and that was kind of an astounding thing to witness. Anywhere you go, and we would arrive in some space, and there would be a table there, and he would talk to you about what that table really meant and why that table looked the way it looked, and trace that back to some historical moment. Zola, obviously he's of the '80s generation, as they call it, and he's much more progressive-minded, much more of like sort of thinking about the future, like how do we change the course of the future, and how do we look at the moment now for what it is, and so I think that tension is probably maybe the most interesting in as far as how they're different. I mean, there's so many other ways.
I have two final questions.
Yeah.
You're going to Hot Docs, right? When do you leave?
The third.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does it feel like to be in New York with a movie about you that in a way makes you a star, and for someone like me to see you sit across the room with you and talk to you, someone I never knew about until the documentary made you real to me. What does that do? Is this like a fulfillment of a goal, or is it just a stone on a lot of stones going across the water?
Well, I should add before, not to cut you off, but that before we came around, both Zola and Tiger were featured in, kind of like countless news stories from BBC
Okay.
to
So
Reuters,
they already were
Time
media
Magazine,
figures.
NHK. Every major international news publication actually had already picked up on their story.
Okay.
So, we're not breaking the story, and I
No.
don't want to falsely promote that.
Okay.
But
So you already were a star. That's what I mean. You were already in the public consciousness.
I'm stupid guy from small village, so I came to there is like a Mission Impossible, maybe, because I never imagined I will be New York one day. So it's amazing, it's fantastic trip for me.
This is a technical question. I want to know how you get your equipment, both of them, how they afford it, how you put it on the internet, and who actually has access to it. How I know in the United States, the majority of people in the United States who look at the internet look at it on their phone. Particularly people that don't have a lot of money. They look at it on their phone. And in China, there's a lot of cell phones. But so how did you get your equipment? How do you pay for it? Two, how do you put it up online? And how do people watch it? And anyone can answer this.
What's the question?
So he's asked. Well, let me help with number one. He gets a lot of equipment has been donated. We saw BlackBerry was donated. We saw, an iPad he received for services.
iPad not donated by someone, just from salary.
Oh, right. So he did some work as some technical support for an NGO. So he does a lot of bartering of his services, and then a lot of people want to support him online. So if they hear there's a story that he's going to go to, people would just be like, hey, let me help you out. And that was a major source of income for him.
The Kickstarter kind of concept, in the sense of small donations, of small amounts of money.
Right, in a sense, it was like a crowdfunding.
Yes, crowdfunding.
But as far as how he gets the blogs online, I mean, I think you do it the same way we do it. You post it online, right? Through you have a domestic host or overseas host.
Yes, I have my blog, my website host in Los Angeles, maybe dreamhouse.com, the company, host
Okay,
company.
because at one point in the film, is it your blog that is censored? And you have to go outside of China to get a way of putting your material up.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
But did the authorities, whoever the authorities are, get upset that you had found a way around?
No, because they are just a block, just to stop other people access my blog, not to stop I using my own blog.
Okay.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, there was a film here about Iranian youth who made music, and the government called it official music, and nothing was supported that was unofficial. And they had a lot of really wonderful technology, and they made really good sort of techno electronica music. And what happened, and everyone knew about it, because one of the young women started an internet music magazine, which everything was uploaded to, and they couldn't play any place, but they played in the cloud, so to speak. And it seems that the cloud is a blogger's palace of communication. Yes.
The cloud. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sort of internet savvy, not even remotely as he is. So I wouldn't really have a comment on that.
Well, it is. I'm going to interject that this is the way that the communication happens when the officials don't want it to happen. Last question is to you as a filmmaker and Tina as a producer. The only other film I know of that you worked on was The Lioness, which was at Tribeca a couple of 3 years ago, I believe, and a sort of different look at the military. It was about women in the military who really wanted to be in the military and wanted to fight, etc. And there was an article in the New York Times today about the Marines are now putting women in the front line, and that was a very controversial issue in your film. Mm-hmm. Where do you go next in subject matter? That's a world away from, I think, from what you're doing with high tech.
Right. Well, that was an amazing experience working with Meg McClagan and Daria Summers on Linus. That really primed me to sort of feel ready and to really want to be involved in working on films that had a significant social meaning and value. And that could be, not that I would never characterize myself as like an advocacy filmmaker, but you certainly want to be involved in projects that have a component for positive change, that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and that are just kind of unbelievable stories that you haven't heard yet, And so there's a slew of films I would love to work on. I think we're going to live with this film for a little while, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm very interested to see how this takes shape. What happens to it?
To both of you, what are the mechanics now? What do you do with a film like this in terms of the distribution? Do you look for a broadcast situation or a theatrical situation? How do you? We have all these wonderful films, and how do you get them to people that don't even know they exist? And it's a difficult world right now. So that must be a question you ask yourselves too when you think of subject matter, no?
Yeah.
Well, it's rare people like you who are really, supporting us and actually get it. Just you get this project, and we really appreciate that.
So would you prefer that it be like on an HBO or a cable kind of platform?
Well,
We're actually an ITBS funded film, so
Uh-huh.
we'll be
Yeah, ITVS.
on PBS. Yeah, and I think that's the right place for it.
Okay, yeah. And will it be the same length when they broadcast it that we see in the screenings that we've seen here?
We'll have to cut it down a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. But it will be then available in DVD form or in some kind of just